Lena had always thought her life would follow the same predictable path, a quiet life on her home planet, surrounded by familiar faces and routines. She worked as a humble caretaker for an ancient library, spending her days cataloging old books and manuscripts, lost in her thoughts and the peaceful world around her. But everything changed the moment the message arrived. It wasn't just any ordinary message. The entire city paused as a large hologram flickered to life in the center of the town square, showing the face of an alien ruler. The alien, known as Zalith, was the emperor of the Zyrexian Empire, a powerful race that had long existed on the other side of the galaxy. Lena had heard rumors about the Zyrexians, but they were just that, rumors. Now they were standing in front of her, and everything she had ever known was about to be shattered. The hologram crackled, and the image of Zalith appeared, his face sharp and regal, his expression calm but cold. His voice echoed through the square. "Lena, daughter of Kren, you are chosen to marry me." The crowd around her gasped. She couldn't understand what she was hearing. Marry him? Why her? She was nobody important, just a librarian. She had no special skills or noble blood, nothing that would make her stand out among the millions of people on her planet. But Zalith continued, explaining that his people, the Zyrexians, were in desperate need of an alliance. Their empire was crumbling due to internal struggles, and they needed the strength of Lena's planet's resources to survive. The marriage was not just a union of two people, it was a union of two worlds. The marriage would bind their civilizations together, ensuring peace and prosperity for both. Lena felt her heart race as the weight of the situation settled in. How could she marry a stranger, especially someone from another world? And not just any stranger, this alien was blind. She had heard rumors about him, how he had once been a warrior, a great and mighty ruler, but had lost his sight in a terrible battle. Yet, despite his blindness, he was still a feared and respected leader. Why would he want her, a simple girl with no powers? The thought swirled in her mind, but there was no time to process it. The decision was not hers to make. The message ended, leaving Lena standing in a stunned silence. The people around her whispered and pointed, some with fear, others with curiosity. She was chosen, and there was no escaping it. Lena's life was no longer hers to control. She had to go to Xerix, the capital of the Zyrexian Empire, and marry Zalith. Her heart sank as she realized the truth. She had no choice. She would have to leave everything she knew behind, her family, her friends, her peaceful life, and step into a future that was as mysterious as it was terrifying. As Lena stood in the square, the weight of her new reality pressing down on her, a part of her couldn't help but wonder, what was it about her that made her the one chosen for this impossible task? And most importantly, what kind of man was Zalith, the blind alien emperor, who now held the fate of both their worlds in his hands? Her journey had only just begun, and already, it seemed as though the universe itself was determined to test her in ways she never imagined. Lena stepped off the transport ship onto the cold, unfamiliar ground of Xerix, her heart racing with each uncertain step. The sky above was a dark purple, filled with strange, swirling clouds that seemed to pulse with energy. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of alien plants and the faint hum of distant machinery. Everything about this place felt otherworldly, a far cry from the peaceful life she had left behind. She was escorted by guards through towering, metallic structures that stretched far into the sky, their surfaces gleaming like polished silver. As they walked, Lena couldn't help but feel the weight of the eyes that followed her every move. The Zyrexians, tall and imposing, watched her with curiosity, their expressions unreadable. It was clear that she wasn't just a guest, she was a symbol, the key to an alliance that would change the fate of both their civilizations. The palace was unlike anything Lena had ever seen. Its walls seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and the floors were made of a smooth, almost translucent material that gave off a soft glow. She followed the guards down a long, winding hallway, the silence of the place making her feel even more out of place. Finally, they stopped before a large set of doors, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories of distant battles and ancient legends. The doors opened, revealing the throne room, a vast space with a high ceiling and walls lined with glowing orbs. And there, at the far end of the room, sat Zaleth. His appearance was striking, even from a distance. His skin was a deep shade of green, almost metallic in the light, and his hair, though short, shimmered like stardust. He sat on a large, intricately carved throne, his posture regal and unyielding. But it wasn't his appearance that caught Lena's attention. It was the way he seemed to be attuned to the world around him. Despite his blindness, Zaleth moved with a grace that suggested he was aware of everything in the room. His senses heightened in ways Lena couldn't comprehend. As she approached, she noticed the way his ears twitched slightly, as if listening for the faintest sound, and the way his hands rested on the armrests of the throne, fingers twitching ever so slightly as though feeling the vibrations of the air itself. "Lena, daughter of Kren," he said, his voice low and commanding. "I have been waiting for you." Lena froze. His voice was far softer than she had expected, carrying a quiet power that was both comforting and unsettling. He didn't ask her to kneel or bow. Instead, he gestured to the space beside him. "Come," he said, "sit with me. We have much to discuss." As she walked closer, Lena couldn't help but feel an odd mix of fear and curiosity. This was the man she was supposed to marry, the blind alien emperor who held the fate of two worlds in his hands. He didn't look like the ruthless ruler she had imagined. There was a sadness in his eyes, a depth that made him seem more human than alien. He wasn't just a conqueror. He was a leader burdened by a responsibility he could no longer carry alone. Lena took the seat beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt suffocating in its silence, the tension thick enough to cut through with a knife. Finally, Zaleth broke the silence. "I know what you must be thinking," he said softly. "That this union is a trap, that you are nothing more than a pawn in a game of survival. But I promise you, it is more than that. It must be more than that, or we are both lost." Lena's eyes widened. How did he know? The questions she had kept bottled up inside since the message first arrived were now bubbling to the surface, but she didn't have the words to express them. Why her? Why this marriage? Zaleth turned his head toward her, his unseeing gaze piercing into her soul. "There's something in you, Lena, something that I believe will change everything." She didn't understand what he meant, but there was something in his words that made her chest tighten. His blindness didn't seem to be a weakness. In some strange way, it was almost as if his lack of sight allowed him to see things others couldn't. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this strange union than she had ever imagined. The weight of the moment settled around them, and Lena realized, with a sinking feeling, that this was only the beginning. She was about to embark on a journey that would change her life forever, a journey with a blind alien who saw more than she could ever comprehend. The days that followed were a whirlwind of confusion and strange encounters. Lena had barely begun to grasp her new reality when she was thrust into a routine she never imagined. Life on Xerix was nothing like what she had known. The palace was a maze of corridors and chambers, each one more alien than the last, filled with scents and sounds she couldn't yet understand. But it wasn't just the environment that unsettled her. It was Zaleth himself. At first, she had assumed their interactions would remain formal, distant, and cold. But that wasn't the case. Zaleth, despite being blind, seemed to know exactly how to read her emotions. Every time she entered a room, his senses would zero in on her presence as if he could hear the very beat of her heart. His blind eyes didn't stop him from perceiving more than most could. They spent hours together, each conversation slipping into deeper territory. Zaleth didn't speak much of his past, but over time, he opened up in fragments. He shared stories of his people, the Xyrixian Empire, and their struggles. But it was his vulnerability that intrigued Lena most. He spoke of his blindness with a quiet acceptance, but there was an unspoken grief behind his words. One evening, as they sat in the palace's garden, Lena watched him as he listened to the night around him. The air was filled with the soft hum of alien creatures, their wings fluttering like the beat of a distant drum. Zaleth tilted his head slightly, listening intently, his fingers brushing the surface of a small glowing flower. He turned to Lena with a soft smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Do you know, Lena?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of a secret. "I once had the ability to see, to truly see, not just with my eyes, but with my heart." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. the words hanging in the air like a mystery waiting to be unraveled. She had always thought of sight as a simple, tangible sense, but to him, it seemed to mean so much more. She leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "What happened?" she asked gently. Zaleth's smile faded, replaced by a shadow of sorrow. "War, the price of power, is often paid in more than just blood." His voice was thick with emotion, but it was clear he wasn't ready to share all of it. The mystery behind his blindness was something deeper than just a physical injury. It was a part of who he was now, something that defined his very being. Lena didn't press him further. She understood that some things couldn't be rushed, but the more she spent time with him, the more she saw that Zaleth was not the monster she had expected. His blindness had shaped him in ways that made him more perceptive, more connected to the world around him than anyone she had ever known. It was almost as if his heart could see the things his eyes never could. The days turned into weeks, and Lena began to notice subtle changes in herself. She was no longer the frightened girl who had been brought here by force. She was becoming something else, someone who could see past the surface, who could understand the world beyond appearances. Zaleth's blind gaze had a way of opening her mind, making her see the world through his eyes, or rather, through his heart. It was as if her heart, too, began to see beyond the stars. But with every new connection they shared, Lena also felt a growing sense of unease. There was a tension in the air, an undercurrent of something that neither of them could ignore. This was not just a marriage of convenience. It was something much more complicated. The weight of it all began to settle on Lena's shoulders. She had been brought here to save her planet, but now she was starting to wonder if the real mission was something far more personal. A mission to understand, to heal, and perhaps to love. But she wasn't sure she was ready for that. Not yet. The journey ahead seemed more uncertain than ever, but one thing was clear. Lena could no longer deny the pull she felt toward Zaleth. There was something about him that reached into the deepest parts of her soul, and though she didn't fully understand it, she couldn't ignore it. The story between them was just beginning, and both of their hearts were about to face challenges they never saw coming. Lena's world was changing faster than she could comprehend. Every moment spent in Xerix felt like a dream. Each day a new mystery unfolding in ways she had never imagined. She had started to settle into her role, learning the customs of the Xyrixian people and navigating the palace's intricate halls. But there was always the underlying tension, the sense that something far bigger than herself was at play. Then came the day that would forever alter her perception of Zaleth and their marriage. It began like any other day, with a quiet breakfast in the palace's grand hall, the golden light streaming through the tall windows. Zaleth was unusually silent, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup as though lost in thought. Lena had grown accustomed to his silences, but this one felt different. There was a weight in the air, a sense of unease that seemed to radiate from him. Before she could ask, the palace alarms blared to life, their high-pitched tones vibrating through the walls. The moment was shattered, and panic surged in Lena's chest. Zaleth's expression hardened, and his posture shifted into that of a leader preparing for war. Without a word, he rose from the table and motioned for Lena to follow. They moved swiftly through the palace, the air thick with the sound of approaching chaos. Zaleth's guards were already stationed at key points, their movements sharp and decisive. Lena couldn't understand what was happening. She had never seen him like this. Usually, he was calm, composed, and collected. But now, there was a fire in his eyes that terrified her. As they reached the central control room, Zaleth stopped and turned to face her. His hand found hers, gripping it gently but firmly. "Lena, what you're about to witness, it's not just an attack on me, it's an attack on us. Our alliance." His voice was low, almost tender, yet there was an undeniable intensity in it. "I need you to stay close. Trust me." Lena nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what he meant, but there was something in his words, something in his grip, that told her this was serious. The doors to the control room opened, and the chaos of battle was immediately apparent. Rebels, humans who had allied themselves with a faction of Xyrixian enemies, had infiltrated the palace. They were well organized, determined, and angry. The room was filled with flashing lights and the sound of blasters firing. The guards were fighting fiercely to protect the palace, but it was clear they were outnumbered. Zalith moved without hesitation, his heightened senses guiding him through the madness. Lena was at his side, watching him as he commanded his soldiers with precise, calculated instructions, every movement executed with the skill of a seasoned warrior. She had never seen him fight, but it was clear now, Zalith was no ordinary ruler. His blindness didn't make him weaker. It made him stronger. He had adapted in ways Lena could never have imagined. Every order he gave was met with swift action, his mind moving faster than the battle itself. Lena's own emotions were a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She was a stranger in this world, an unwilling participant in a war she didn't fully understand. Yet, as she watched Zalith, she felt a strange surge of admiration. He was strong, determined, and above all, he was protecting them all, protecting her. But it wasn't just his strength that caught Lena's attention. As the battle raged around them, Zalith reached out and grasped her hand once more. The moment his fingers touched hers, Lena felt something she couldn't explain, a deep, almost magnetic connection. It wasn't just a physical touch. It was something beyond that. Zalith was showing her the world in a way she had never known. His trust, his vulnerability, and his strength were all wrapped up in that one gesture. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, but eventually the rebels were pushed back. The palace guards stood victorious, though many had fallen in the process. Zalith, though exhausted, remained stoic, his face unreadable. But Lena could see the toll it had taken on him. The blindness that had once seemed like a weakness now revealed itself as his greatest strength, and it made Lena see him in a new light. As the chaos settled, Zalith turned to her, his hand still gently holding hers. "We've won for now, Lena, but there's much more to come." His voice was quiet but resolute. Lena didn't understand fully, but in that moment, she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't turn back now. Whatever future awaited her on Xerix, she was in it with Zalith. And for the first time since arriving on this alien world, Lena wasn't afraid anymore. The days following the attack were a blur. The palace was quieter now, as if the very walls were holding their breath in the aftermath. Zalith remained in the command center for hours at a time, overseeing repairs and organizing the rebuilding of defenses. Lena, still reeling from the violence she had witnessed, found herself alone in her chambers more often than not, lost in thought. It was as though the intensity of the battle had altered everything. What had once felt like a forced marriage now seemed like the beginning of something far deeper, something unspoken, yet undeniable. Zalith's presence was constant, even when he wasn't physically there. She could feel him. His quiet strength lingered in every corner of the palace. His every word seemed to echo in her mind, stirring something she wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. Love, the word felt foreign, almost wrong to think about in this strange world. But as the days passed, Lena couldn't ignore it any longer. She had seen how he fought for her people, for her, without hesitation, even when it seemed like he had every reason to turn away. She had seen how he trusted her in a way that no one ever had. It was one evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the palace in a soft, golden glow, that Lena found herself standing at the edge of the royal garden, waiting for Zalith. His presence always seemed to calm the turmoil inside her, though she didn't quite understand why. He appeared in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the soft light. Despite his blindness, he moved with a purpose, his every step sure, like he knew exactly where he was going. As he approached her, Lena felt a wave of emotions crash over her, fear, longing, uncertainty. "Lena," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight she hadn't heard before. "You've been distant these past few days. Something is bothering you." Lena hesitated, unsure how to respond. She had always prided herself on being strong, independent, but in this alien world, she felt like a child again, struggling to understand her place. How could she explain the storm of emotions that swirled within her? "I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I came here to save my world, but now it feels like I'm losing myself instead." Zalith stepped closer, his hand reaching out in the direction of her voice. When his fingers brushed against her arm, Lena couldn't help but shiver at the unexpected touch. His skin was warm, and despite his blindness, he seemed to know exactly where she was, "You're not losing yourself, Lena," he said with a quiet confidence. "You're finding yourself. In a world you never imagined, with a person you never thought you would meet." His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. She looked at him, trying to read his expression, but it was impossible. His blindness didn't stop him from understanding her in ways no one else could. The way he spoke, the way he reached for her, not with his eyes, but with his heart, made her realize something. The connection between them wasn't just born of necessity or duty. It was something deeper, something more profound. Lena took a deep breath, her mind racing. This wasn't just a marriage. This wasn't just a contract or an alliance. This was something that had the potential to change everything. I think I'm starting to understand," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. "I think I'm starting to see beyond what's right in front of me." Zaleth's hand found hers, his grip firm but gentle. "Then you're already ahead of where I was when I first lost my sight." For the first time since arriving on Xerox, Lena felt a flicker of something that wasn't just fear or confusion. It was the beginning of trust, of understanding, of something that felt almost like love. It wasn't the love she had imagined when she first heard of this marriage. It was different, more complex, more raw. As they stood there, side by side in the garden, Lena realized that Zaleth's blindness had never been a limitation. It was a window into a different kind of seeing, one that required no eyes, no light, just heart. And for the first time in her life, Lena wondered if love wasn't about seeing at all. Maybe it was about feeling, about connecting, about seeing beyond the surface, beyond the stars, to something deeper, something unspoken. And in that moment, Lena knew, with an unsettling certainty, that whatever came next, she was ready to face it with Zaleth, together. The quiet between Lena and Zaleth grew deeper as the days passed. They no longer spent their time with formalities or distance. Their connection, forged through battles, shared secrets, and silent understandings, had evolved into something unspoken yet undeniable. But Lena knew that something was coming, something that would force them to face the future, whether they were ready or not. It was one evening, as the stars outside Xerox shimmered in unfamiliar constellations, that Zaleth's voice broke the silence. His words carried a weight, a quiet urgency that made Lena's heart race. "There's something you must know, Lena, something that will change everything." Lena turned to face him, her pulse quickening. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had learned that with Zaleth, every revelation was both terrifying and fascinating. The weight of his words always hinted at a truth far deeper than what was visible. Zaleth was quiet for a moment, as though measuring how best to share this with her. He stood by the large window, his face illuminated by the glow of distant stars. "The blindness that you see in me is not my true burden, Lena. It is a mask, a shield. The real truth lies within." Lena frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Zaleth turned to face her, his gaze intense despite the emptiness of his eyes. "I possess something that my enemies seek, something so powerful it could change the balance of the universe." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the depth of the secret he had kept buried for so long. "I have the power to manipulate the very fabric of space and time itself, a gift passed down through generations of my people. But it is also a curse. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything we know." Lena's mind raced. She had thought she was simply marrying a blind alien to form an alliance, to save her planet from war. But now, the stakes were higher than she could ever have imagined. The marriage wasn't just a political strategy. It was a shield, a desperate attempt to protect the universe itself from a power so immense. No one could comprehend its potential. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Lena asked, her voice trembling with shock. "Why keep this secret from me?" Zaleth stepped closer, the air between them charged with tension. "I had to, Lena, for your safety and mine. If anyone knew the truth, they would stop at nothing to take it from me. But now that you're here, I can no longer keep it from you. You are the key, Lena. You were chosen not just for your planet, but for this." Lena felt the weight of his words press down on her chest. She wasn't just part of an alliance anymore. She wasn't just a pawn in a political game. She had been drawn into a battle for control over the universe itself. But there was more to it than that. Zaleth needed her, not just as his wife, but as someone who could see what he could not. someone who could help him navigate the storm that was coming. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Her heart, which had once been torn between fear and duty, now began to pulse with a sense of purpose. Whatever this power was, whatever the future held, she was ready to face it by Zaleth's side. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were in this together. The days grew heavier, each one weighed down by the knowledge they both carried. Lena could feel the growing tension between her and Zaleth, a sense of impending danger that neither of them could ignore. The secret of his power, the power to alter space and time, had drawn them into a web they couldn't escape. Enemies were closing in, and the entire universe seemed to be holding its breath. One night, as the stars flickered above them, Zaleth took Lena's hand and led her to the garden. The familiar scent of alien flowers filled the air, but tonight everything felt different. The wind carried a sense of urgency, as if the universe itself was aware of the change happening between them. "Lena," Zaleth began, his voice strained, "you know what we're up against now. The others will come. They won't stop until they have what I've kept hidden for so long." Lena nodded, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. She had felt the change, the shift in the air, the rebellion against their marriage, the threats from unseen forces. They were all converging, but it wasn't just the danger that was unsettling her. It was the realization that Zaleth wasn't just a ruler. He wasn't just an alien. He was someone she had come to care for deeply. "I didn't choose this, Lena," Zaleth continued, his grip tightening around her hand. "I didn't choose this power. But now I see the only way forward. Together." The rawness in his words took her by surprise. He was the emperor of a vast empire, a being who had once ruled with unchallenged authority. But now, in front of her, he was vulnerable, exposed in a way that made her heart ache. Lena looked up at him, her eyes searching his. She had thought of this moment, the moment when the weight of their choices would break through the illusion of duty and force. But now that it was here, she realized she wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid of the power, of the enemies, or of the unknown future. She was afraid of losing him. This was real. "What happens now?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. "We fight." Zaleth's words were firm, but his gaze softened. "We protect what's ours, this world, this alliance, and the future we can build together. There's no turning back now. The universe is on the edge, and it's up to us to tip the scale." Lena's heart surged with something she couldn't name. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't just some pawn in an intergalactic game. She had found something far more powerful than alliances or politics. She had found a purpose. As the stars above twinkled like distant promises, Lena and Zaleth stood together, their futures entwined in a way neither could escape. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and unknowns, but they had each other. And for the first time since she arrived on Xerox, Lena felt like she was finally where she was meant to be, standing beside Zaleth, facing the challenges that lay ahead together.